The day I received the confirmation of my husband's ALS diagnosis, I also discovered he was cheating on me. He asked for a divorce, calmly stating I could have everything. He didn't want the money, he said. He just wanted her. I didn't cry or scream. I simply tucked the diagnosis report away and said, "Fine. I hope you mean that." Honestly, I had no intention of caring for a man who would eventually be paralyzed. His affair was a twisted kind of relief. We went to the county courthouse to file the petition. The clerk informed us there was a mandatory 30-day waiting period before the divorce could be finalized. "Once the month is up," she said, "if you both still agree, you can come back to sign the final decree." The moment she finished speaking, a rubber stamp slammed down on the filing receipt. I glanced at the clock on the wall. It was 10:03 a.m. Less than 24 hours had passed since I'd discovered his affair. He'd asked for a divorce, and we'd begun the legal process. It was just like when we first met, married in 3 months, alarmingly fast. Snapping back to the present, I saw Ethan take the receipt. His long, articulate fingers, the hands of a successful lawyer, folded the paper with practiced efficiency. "Remember to be here in a month to finalize this." "Don't back out," he said, his brow furrowed as if he feared I'd cling to him. I nodded. "I know. You don't regret this either." He didn't reply, already engrossed in his phone, texting. I could see the ghost of a familiar, gentle smile on his face as he typed. I couldn't remember the last time he'd smiled at me that way. When we were dating, that smile was mine. But somewhere along the line, it had been replaced by coldness and distance. I'd blamed the stress of his work, but the truth was simpler. His heart no longer belonged to me. The drive home was silent. He parked in the driveway and began pulling his things out of the closet, packing them into suitcases in the trunk of his car. Suddenly, a woman's voice called out from down the street. "Ethan, what are you doing?" I looked up to see Stella standing there. The woman Ethan claimed didn't want his money, only him. Seeing him packing, she rushed over and grabbed his arm. "Ethan, you and Joanna are divorced now. She should be the one packing her things." As she spoke, Stella shot disdainful glances in my direction. I leaned against the doorframe, watching the scene unfold. A slow realization dawned on me. Ethan hadn't told her he was leaving with nothing. "Miss Stella," I said, my voice dripping with false sweetness, "maybe you should take a closer look at whose things he's packing." Her eyes darted to the suitcase, which was filled with Ethan's own tailored suits and expensive shoes. Her face fell. "Ethan, you're moving your things out?" He took her hand, his smile placating. "I'm coming to live with you, of course. I have to bring some things." Stella's head whipped around to face me. "Joanna, Ethan bought this condo in full. If anyone should be leaving, it's you." My gaze shifted to Ethan. He quickly pulled Stella aside, murmuring, "Stella, I agreed to give her everything. It's okay. Whatever she has now will have so much more in the future." The words "give her everything" hit Stella like a physical blow. Her face turned ugly with shock, but Ethan's reassuring promise seemed to pacify her. She took a deep breath, her expression softening. "Okay, I trust you." Then she started helping him pack. I watched them, a cynical smile on my face. Ethan, as a lawyer, was a master of protecting his own interests. Stella probably thought this was just a temporary strategy, that he would eventually get everything back from me. Too bad for her. This wasn't just a verbal agreement. Ethan had insisted on having a formal settlement agreement drafted and notarized, detailing his forfeiture of all marital assets. That's how desperate he was to start his new life with her. The mere loss of the condo had provoked such a strong reaction from Stella. Her claim of not caring about money was the most transparent lie I'd ever heard. Once the car was packed, Ethan turned to me. "I'll get the rest of my things within the month." With that, he and Stella drove away. The sprawling condo felt cavernous and empty. When we bought it, I thought this would be the home where we'd spend the rest of our lives. Now, just 3 years later, it was all over. Every corner held a memory of us, making it impossible for me to stay. I immediately listed the condo on Zillow. Minutes after the listing went live, Ethan's law partner, Mark, called me. "Joanna, did you two really file for divorce?" he asked as soon as I answered. "We did," I said. Mark sighed. "You helped him build his career from the ground up. Things were just starting to get really good for you both. He's just chasing a thrill, Joanna. Once he's had his fun, he'll come back to you." I can't believe he's throwing everything away for an assistant he's known for less than 6 months. Every word was a plea for me to reconsider, to not make a rash decision, but it was Ethan who was determined to leave. If he didn't want me by his side, how could I possibly stay? I silently pulled his diagnosis report from my purse. Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS. Yesterday, holding this paper, I was drowning in grief. Today, I felt a strange sense of relief. When people do terrible things, karma has a way of finding them. I took out a lighter and set the report on fire. Watching the flames dance, I spoke to Mark. "Don't worry, I won't regret this. After all, Ethan doesn't have a future anymore." I thought that would be the end of it, but Mark was persistent. He was determined to fix our marriage. He called again a few days later, asking me to drop off a case file Ethan had left at the condo. I hesitated but agreed. I wanted to be done with this, and this felt like a final, clean break. Arriving at the firm, Bryant & Cole LLP, I saw the sign and remembered the day Ethan founded it. "Joanna," he had said, pointing at the brass plaque, "this is the beginning. I'm going to give you a better life." Who would have thought the starting point of his career would be the end of our marriage? I shook the memory away and walked inside. Mark met me and insisted on taking me to Ethan's office. As we approached, I saw them through the glass door. Stella was perched on the edge of his desk, handing him a cup of coffee. Their eyes were locked, completely oblivious to us. As Ethan took the cup, his hand suddenly trembled, spilling dark liquid across a stack of documents. He frowned, clearly puzzled by his own lack of control. But Stella just laughed, dabbing the spill with a tissue. "You must really like me," she cooed. "Staring at me so hard your hands are shaking." Ethan, dismissing the tremor, took her hand. "It's because you're so beautiful." They leaned in for a kiss, and a sharp pain lanced through my chest. I couldn't watch anymore. I turned, handed the file to Mark, and walked away without a word. Mark caught up to me, his voice apologetic. "Joanna, Ethan's been under a lot of pressure lately. This is just a momentary lapse in judgment." "Mark," I cut him off gently, "you don't have to make excuses for him. Please, don't waste any more of your energy on this. I know what I need to do." I took a deep breath. There is no chance of us getting back together. Ever. Mark fell silent, his gaze shifting to something behind me. I turned around. A pair of familiar eyes were fixed on me. Ethan was standing there. He had heard every word. His face was a mask of cold fury. He looked at me, a cruel smirk twisting his lips. "Joanna, your little game of playing hard to get won't work on me." I froze, a bitter taste filling my mouth. The only reason he'd think I was playing a game was because he was convinced I still loved him, that I couldn't live without him. I didn't argue. I just met his gaze and said softly, "Don't worry, Ethan. I can love and I can let go. Since I agreed to the divorce, I won't bother you again." The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside without a backward glance. As the doors slid shut, the tension finally drained from my body, but the image of him and Stella flashed in my mind, each one a fresh cut on my heart. I still couldn't understand how he could fall in love with someone else so easily, but my pride would never let me ask. When I got home, a real estate agent was already showing the condo. The location was prime, and within days of listing it, I had multiple offers. Today's viewers were decisive. They signed an offer on the spot. As the deposit hit my account, I promised them, "Don't worry, I'll have the place cleared out and professionally cleaned for you within a couple of days." For the next 2 days, I was a whirlwind of activity. I bought a smaller apartment closer to the hospital and began packing. As for the things Ethan hadn't taken, I boxed them all up and had them couriered to his law firm, cash on delivery. I had just packed the last box and was about to call the agent when Ethan showed up. He stood in the doorway, not taking a step inside. "Mom and Dad want us to come over for dinner tonight," he said, his tone icy. I paused for a beat. "Let me correct you. They're your parents now, not mine." His face darkened. "We haven't signed the final papers. You don't have to be so cruel to them." My head buzzed. Cruel? I couldn't believe the man I had loved most in the world would use that word to describe me. The words caught in my throat. He didn't wait for a reply, grabbing my arm and pulling me toward his car. In the passenger seat, a glittery sticker was already affixed to the dashboard, Stella's seat. I froze, then mechanically opened the back door. "I'll sit in the back." The silence in the car was suffocating. This was what our marriage had become in the last 6 months. Two people, closer than anyone, yet more distant than strangers. My heart ached with a familiar, dull pain. That evening, at the family home, his parents piled food onto my plate. Then came the usual interrogation. "Joanna, you and Ethan have been married 3 years. When are you going to have a baby? You work too hard. Being a doctor is so stressful. Why don't you quit and focus on getting pregnant?" I'd heard this speech 1,000 times. I'd always endured it for Ethan's sake, nodding and smiling. But not tonight. I set down my chopsticks and looked at each person at the table. My voice was quiet but firm. "Mrs. Bryant, you should save that speech for Ethan's next wife." As they stared in stunned silence, I dropped the bomb. "Ethan and I have already filed for divorce. The reason is that your son, Ethan, cheated on me with his assistant. He has agreed to leave the marriage with nothing. I don't owe your family anything." Ethan's face went white. "Joanna!" he hissed, his voice trembling with rage. He clearly never expected me to air our dirty laundry so publicly. The silence was deafening. His father, his hands shaking, turned to Ethan. "Ethan, is what she's saying true?" After a long pause, Ethan nodded. "Stella is a sweet, wonderful girl. I'll bring her home to meet you in a few days. I know you'll love her." He just admitted it, so brazenly. A bitter smile touched my lips. Of course. Ethan would do anything to protect the person he loved from the slightest discomfort. He had been the same with me when we first started dating, eager to bring me home, desperate to marry me. Now, he was giving Stella the exact same treatment. His father exploded. "You dare bring a homewrecker into this house? I don't have a son like you. What kind of wonderful girl gets involved with a married man?" Ethan's face hardened at the insult to his new love. "Dad, Stella and I are in love." The response was a sharp slap across his face. "This family does not welcome divorcees, and we certainly don't have a disgraceful son like you. What do you think people will say about us?" Mr. Bryant cared about one thing: appearances. He didn't give a damn about our marriage, only that it didn't tarnish the family name. Ethan stood frozen, stunned by the blow. His father turned to me, his tone shifting. "Joanna, this is a family matter. We shouldn't air it publicly. We apologize on Ethan's behalf. Don't hold this against him. We'll make sure he breaks it off with that woman. You two can withdraw the petition before it's finalized." He shot a look at Ethan's mother, who immediately rushed to my side, grabbing my hand. "That's right, Joanna. If you don't want to have kids yet, we won't push you. We can work this out. There's no need for divorce." Ethan was visibly fuming, but he said nothing, trapped by his parents' authority. He always did this, for 3 years, pushing me to be the one to confront them, to be the bad guy. Fine, I'll be the bad guy one last time. I pulled my hand away. "I'm sorry, but I'm not generous enough to accept a husband whose heart is somewhere else." My firm refusal left them speechless. Then, his mother's tone turned accusatory. "Joanna, when you two got married, he was the one who was unfaithful. But don't you have any fault in this? You obviously failed to keep your man's interest. This is going to be so embarrassing for you when people find out." A knife twisted in my gut, but I managed a small, cold laugh. "He's the one who cheated. Why should I be embarrassed?" I shook off her hand, grabbed my purse, and walked out. I hadn't gone far when Ethan caught up to me. "Joanna, wait." He reached for me, but his hand froze in midair, suspended and trembling. It was an early symptom of the ALS. I watched him coolly. "Is there something else?" He frowned, quickly regaining his composure. He glared at me, his voice laced with accusation. "Did you do this on purpose? To ruin Stella's reputation? Now my parents will never accept her. Are you satisfied?" I looked at the man before me, and for a moment, my mind went blank. I couldn't remember why I had ever fallen in love with him. The man in my memories spoke to me with tenderness, his gentle care a source of comfort. The man standing before me now looked at me with something close to hatred. I never imagined our years of love would end like this. Tears pricked my eyes. "Ethan," I asked, my voice shaking, "when you decided to cheat, did you ever think about this day?" His face went rigid. I said nothing more and walked away. The next day was my day off. I finalized the sale of the condo, moved into my new apartment, and invited a few friends and colleagues over for a housewarming party. To Joanna and her new home, My friend Sophie toasted. To my new life, I replied, clinking my glass against hers. From that day on, my life became much quieter. I blocked Ethan's entire family, keeping only his number for the day we had to finalize the divorce. I assumed we would have no further contact. A week later, at 2 a.m., I was proven wrong. I was on call at the hospital when a patient was rushed into the ER. It was Ethan. He was curled up on the gurney, clutching his stomach, his face as white as a sheet. His expensive suit was rumpled and stained. I recognized the signs immediately. A bleeding ulcer. Since starting his firm, his eating habits had become atrocious. I used to nag him constantly, even bringing him healthy, homemade meals. Clearly, without me, he wasn't taking care of himself at all. As I reached out to examine him, a hand shoved me back forcefully. It was Stella, who had accompanied him. "You?" she sneered, her face contorted with displeasure. "Isn't there any other doctor?" My arm stung where she'd pushed me, but Ethan, pale and grimacing in pain, said nothing to stop her. A chill went through me. I stood back from the gurney and looked at her coldly. "I'm the only attending physician in this department on duty right now. So, do you want him treated or not?" Stella's lips thinned, but she was trapped. I maintained my professional demeanor and began my examination, pressing on his abdomen to gauge his reaction. My diagnosis was confirmed. I looked Stella straight in the eye. "If you don't want me treating him, you can either transfer him to another hospital or wait until 8 a.m. for the next shift to come on." I glanced at Ethan, who was now barely conscious, assuming he can last that long. She was furious but knew she had no choice. She finally relented. An hour later, Ethan was stabilized. I finished my duties and went home. The next morning, I went to his room for a post-op check. He was alone. Stella was nowhere to be seen. A post-op patient needs someone to look after them. I recorded his vitals and asked, my brow furrowed, "You're here by yourself? Is no one helping you?" Ethan, propped up against the pillows, his lips pale, answered hoarsely, "She went to get me some food." Just then, Stella walked in, holding a container of what smelled like a very spicy burrito. "Ethan, look, I got you your favorite." The line was super long. Ethan's expression soured. I stared at the greasy, spicy meal and couldn't help but intervene from a medical standpoint. "Miss Stella, he just had surgery on his stomach. He needs to eat bland food." The moment the words left my mouth, Stella's eyes welled up. "What's that supposed to mean, Joanna? You just can't stand seeing me be good to him, can you? Stop trying to cause trouble between us." Her accusation was so ridiculous I was speechless. I lowered my head and continued writing my notes. Ethan sighed, reaching for her hand. "Stella, I can't handle spicy food right now. You eat it. I'll just order some broth." Her voice was thick with tears. "But I stood in line for you, and you won't even eat it." "Don't cry," Ethan soothed her instantly. "When you cry, my heart breaks." My hand, holding the pen, faltered. He had said that to me countless times, when I was curled up with cramps, when I was upset that he was late, when he had accidentally hurt me. Each time he would hold me gently, kiss away my tears, and whisper, "Don't cry. When you cry, my heart breaks." And now, he was using those same words on another woman, right in front of me. I don't know how I managed to walk out of that room. In the hallway, a colleague, Dr. Davis, stopped me. "Dr. Clark, can you take a look at this CT scan? Something feels off." As I reached for the film, a child darted out of a nearby room and ran straight into me. Caught off guard, I stumbled backward, right into Dr. Davis's arms. He steadied me reflexively. "Thanks, Ryan," I started to say, but was cut off by a shrill voice from down the hall. "Joanna, how could you be so shameless, cuddling up with another man at work?" I turned to see Ethan, in his hospital gown, standing at his door with Stella. His face was dark with rage. Stella, however, looked triumphant. "See, Ethan, she's the one who's been cheating all along. It's not fair that you're the one leaving with nothing." My face hardened. Dr. Davis quickly tried to explain. "You've got it all wrong. It was just an accident." Ethan sneered. "What a coincidence. He just happens to accidentally bump into Joanna Clark, and she falls right into your arms." "Ryan, just go," I interrupted before he could say more. "I don't want you dragged into my mess." After he left, Stella continued her tirade. "Ethan, since she cheated on you, giving her everything is completely unfair." Ethan just stood there, his eyes locked on me. I walked toward them, my gaze fixed on Stella. Stella, you're a paralegal. You should know what the legal consequences of slander are. She flinched, but Ethan spoke first, his voice dripping with scorn. Don't you dare try to hide behind legal threats, Joanna. Just admit what you did. What did I do? I asked, completely bewildered. He let out a harsh laugh. Still playing dumb? Fine. That baby you miscarried 6 months ago, was it even mine? The words were a bolt of lightning, a chill racing up from my feet to freeze my very soul. I stared at him in disbelief. So that's why you became so cold 6 months ago. You thought I cheated on you. I didn't think. He snarled. I knew. I stood there, my chest so tight I could barely breathe. 6 months ago, we'd had an unplanned pregnancy. I was overwhelmed with work and had briefly considered not keeping it, but I changed my mind. It was a life. Then, during a particularly grueling emergency surgery, I suffered a miscarriage. While I was in the hospital, grieving, Ethan was cold and distant. I thought he was angry at me for my initial hesitation, so I swallowed my own pain and apologized, trying to make things right. But he only grew colder, using work as an excuse to never come home, forgetting our anniversary, my birthday. I blamed myself, thinking I failed to protect our child, but now I knew the truth. He thought I had betrayed him. My eyes burned. I went to work, and I came home to cook for you. Where would I even find the time to cheat? Ethan scoffed and pulled out his phone, playing a video. It showed me and Dr. Davis entering a hotel late at night and not leaving until the next morning. You told me you had a major surgery that night, Joanna, he said, his voice raw with hatred. What kind of surgery takes place in a hotel? The cold hospital air seemed to seep into my bones. I looked into his eyes and felt nothing but disappointment and a bitter, hollow laugh bubble up inside me. If you suspected me, why didn't you just ask me? Stella jumped in. It was my fault, Joanna. I told Ethan not to confront you. I knew you'd just deny it. This is between me and Ethan, I snapped. Stay out of it. Stella shrank back, looking hurt. Ethan shielded her, sneering at me. You wanted proof. There it is. What do you have to say for yourself now? I looked at this man, my husband of 3 years, who had zero trust in me. My vision blurred with tears. I wiped them away, found a news article on my phone, and held it out to him. We performed an emergency, life-saving surgery in that hotel room. It was all over the news. The family sent a plaque to our department. It's hanging on the wall. You can go see it for yourself. The story had been a big deal at the time. I'd been so excited to tell Ethan about it. But he had shut me down. I'm exhausted from work, Joanna. I'm not interested in some news story. If he had cared about me, about my life, he would have known the truth long ago. But by then, his heart was already gone. I watched the shock dawn on his face, but I felt no vindication. After a long, heavy silence, I just shook my head. Ethan, I said, my voice empty. The only one who betrayed our marriage was you. I put my phone away and walked out. 2 days later, Ethan was discharged. I threw myself back into my work, trying not to think about them. The next time I saw him was 2 weeks later, at the courthouse. Our 30-day waiting period was almost up. This time, I was there as a witness for the hospital in a malpractice suit. He was the hospital's defense attorney. With the evidence on our side and a top lawyer like him, the case was a slam dunk. We won. Afterward, I was heading home when he caught up to me. Joanna, wait. I stopped, my back to him. Is there something you need, Mr. Bryant? The formal address made him flinch. It took him a moment to speak. About before. I was wrong. I misunderstood you. I'm sorry. I just frowned. His overdue apology meant nothing now. The trust was broken. His heart had moved on. Nothing could fix that. It's fine, I said. I have to go. Actually, he said, his voice hesitant. I was wondering, do you still have that recipe for the herbal broth you used to make me? My stomach has been acting up, and Stella, she doesn't know how to cook. He had lost weight in just 2 weeks. Stella really wasn't taking care of him. A part of me thought he'd probably end up back in the hospital soon. I relented. Fine, I'll text it to you. As I turned to leave, he called out again. Oh, and one more thing. Those test results from my last physical at your hospital, did they ever come in? I froze. Before I could answer, Stella ran up, linking her arm through his, a clear display of ownership. "Joanna, the case is over. Why are you still trying to talk to my boyfriend?" Ethan didn't correct her. His silence was an endorsement. My heart sank. I turned back to him. "You can call the hospital for your own test results." I didn't want any part of their drama. I walked away. Behind me, I could hear Stella's sharp voice. "What were you talking to her about? You're not still hung up on her, are you?" Ethan sounded weary. "Stella, can you not be so paranoid? I was just asking her something. I don't have feelings for her anymore." "You're the one who's never made me feel secure," she shot back. "How can I not be paranoid?" "Stella, I let you go through my phone. I gave you my credit cards. You made me delete every female contact I have. What more do you want from me?" So, they fought. But for Ethan, this kind of fighting was probably a price he was willing to pay for love, just like I once was for him. It had nothing to do with me anymore. I walked faster, leaving their voices behind. The next day was Saturday. I went to the mall to buy a birthday present for my best friend, Sophie. I was browsing in a jewelry store when I heard a sickeningly sweet voice. "Joanna, what a coincidence." I looked up. It was Stella, arm in arm with Ethan. I tried to leave, but she blocked my path. "Ethan and I are looking for an engagement ring. Since you're here, why don't you help us pick one out?" Engagement ring. The words were like daggers. We weren't even officially divorced yet, and he was already shopping for a ring with her. Did he have no respect for me at all? I could see the smug, triumphant look on her face. My hands trembled with rage, but I forced myself to remain calm. Me, his ex-wife, helping you choose a ring? I don't think that's appropriate. Ethan looked uncomfortable, but Stella pressed on. "Oh, it's fine. You have such great taste, Joanna. I'm sure whatever you pick will be perfect." I gave a bitter smile and glanced at Ethan. Actually, my taste can be flawed. For instance, I chose the wrong husband. I then pointed to a massive 12-carat diamond ring in the display case, priced at over $1 million. "How about that one? The Star of Chicago." Their faces fell. Ethan had given up all his assets. There was no way he could afford it. Just as I expected, his eyes followed my finger to the price tag, and he froze. "Joanna," he hissed, "are you trying to humiliate me?" "You two were the ones who started this," I shot back. I lowered my voice. "Ethan, do you remember what you used to say? That when you love someone, you should give them the very best in the world." He stared at me, then took a deep breath, pulled out his credit card, and slammed it on the counter. "You're right. Stella, I'm buying it for you." Stella's eyes lit up. She threw her arms around him. "Oh, Ethan, you're the best." The sales staff beamed, but I felt nothing but a cold emptiness. He had forgotten. Years ago, he had promised to buy me that very ring. We were broke back then, and I'd told him we could get it someday. I thought he was just dreaming, but now I knew he had meant it. His love for Stella was just more real, more profound than his love for me had ever been. The man I loved had never truly loved me. The pain was suffocating. I quickly paid for Sophie's gift and fled the store. That night, my phone rang. It was Ethan. "Joanna, you sold our house." His voice was slurred with alcohol. He was drunk. I knew this tone. It was his post-schmoozing, client dinner drunk voice. But I didn't understand this game. Praising Stella to the heavens by day, then getting wasted and calling me at night. "The house was legally transferred to me," I said coldly. "What I do with it is none of your business." There was a long silence. Then, "Where are you living now?" "I need to see you." "There's no need. We'll see each other in a few days when we sign the final papers." I was about to hang up when he spoke again, his voice urgent. "Joanna, I regret it. I don't think Stella and I are right for each other. Can we not get divorced?" My heart seized, but I knew it was just the alcohol talking. "You're drunk, Ethan." "No, I'm not," he insisted. "Joanna, I know this is shameless, but please just listen. I have no one else to talk to." It was the first time I had ever heard him sound so vulnerable, and it was over another woman. "What do you want to say?" I asked, my own voice hoarse. "You know why I fell for Stella? She's young, vibrant. She looks up to me, depends on me. Her whole world revolves around me, you. You're not like that at all." I was silent. I'm a doctor. My life is chaos. I thought our mutual understanding of our demanding careers, punctuated by moments of quiet intimacy, was the ideal state for our marriage. The truth was, He'd grown tired of it. You knew what I was like from the beginning, I said with a bitter laugh. He didn't respond. I took a breath. That's all in the past. In 5 days, you'll be free to be with the woman you love. I won't stand in your way. But that's the problem, he burst out. After we started living together, I realized all she does is go out and have fun. She has no life skills. My stomach was killing me, and I asked for a glass of water and a pill, and she accused me of treating her like a maid. She can't cook. The apartment is a mess. I come home from a long day and I can't even get a glass of hot water. The dam of his frustration broke. This was a side of Ethan I had never seen. The composed, mature man I knew was gone. Maybe you're only that calm when you don't really care. Those aren't major problems, I said, trying to be pragmatic. You can hire a housekeeper. That's not the worst of it, he continued. It's her jealousy. Tonight, I had a meeting with a female client. Stella was convinced I was having an affair and caused a massive scene. I lost the client. I yelled at her, and she threatened to jump off the balcony. I spent hours talking her down. I have to walk on eggshells around her. It's more exhausting than arguing a case in court. Joanna, I realize now how good you were to me, how much you cared. I listened silently, my nails digging into my palm. Ethan, I am not your consolation prize. The moment you chose her, we were over. After a long pause, his voice returned, cold and familiar. Fine, I get it. Just forget I called. I was drunk. I'll see you at the courthouse in 5 days. I'll be there to sign the papers. I hung up, my body slumping as if all the air had been let out of me. A dull ache spread through my chest. My eyes burned. Just cry, I told myself. Cry it all out, and maybe you'll finally be done with him. My 3 years of love for Ethan Bryant had to end. The night before we finalized the divorce was Sophie's birthday. I went to her party as promised. To my surprise, Ethan was there too. Sophie had just gotten back from a trip abroad, so I hadn't had a chance to tell her about the divorce. Joanna, she said, smiling, you and your hotshot lawyer are so busy you have to arrive separately to my party? A few friends who were also in the dark laughed along. Before I could explain, the party was in full swing, and I was seated next to Ethan, as was our custom at gatherings. He glanced at me, then quickly looked away, a flicker of panic in his eyes. Halfway through dinner, there was a clatter. I turned to see that Ethan had tried to put some food on my plate, but his chopsticks had slipped, his hand hovering, trembling, in midair. Another ALS flare-up. I quickly picked up his chopsticks for him. Wow, still so in love after 3 years. You're making us all jealous, someone teased. Seriously, Joanna, what's your secret? You two never fight, another chimed in. The table erupted in good-natured laughter. I was about to set them straight when Ethan's phone rang, the screen flashing the name Stella. A friend sitting nearby gasped, "Ooh, who's Stella?" Ethan, giving a girl such a sweet nickname. Aren't you afraid Joanna will get jealous? Ethan's face turned ashen. The phone kept ringing. He finally stood up. "Excuse me, I have to take this." He stepped outside. I could faintly hear Stella's angry voice demanding to know why he hadn't brought her to the party. He sounded tired, telling her it wasn't a good time, asking her not to make a scene. Everyone at the table had heard the woman's voice, but when they looked at my calm expression, they started teasing again. "Look at that trust. Joanna doesn't even flinch." "Of course not. Ethan is crazy about her. He wouldn't look at another woman." The room filled with laughter, but I couldn't even force a smile. For 3 years, everyone thought we were the perfect couple. And maybe, in the beginning, the love was real. But the lack of love now was just as real. Only Sophie seemed to notice something was wrong, her eyes filled with concern. I gave her a reassuring look. A few minutes later, Ethan came back in. "Sorry, everyone, something's come up. I have to go. Sophie, happy birthday." He grabbed his coat and started for the door. Just as he reached it, I spoke, my voice clear and steady. "Don't forget, 9 a.m. tomorrow, the courthouse, to sign the divorce decree." A hush fell over the room. Ethan froze in the doorway. After a long moment, he answered, his voice hoarse. "Right." Then he was gone. Now everyone understood who Stella was. Sophie's eyes filled with pity. "Joanna, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." "It's okay." I shook my head. "It's your birthday. Let's not let someone who doesn't matter ruin it." The party eventually regained its cheerful atmosphere, but the occasional sympathetic glances made me uncomfortable. I left early. The next morning, I put on a new dress I'd bought and even applied a little makeup before heading to the courthouse. I waited in the lobby for nearly half an hour before a haggard-looking Ethan finally arrived. He was pale. It looked like Stella had given him a rough night. He sat down next to me and mumbled, "Sorry, I'm late." "It's fine, as long as you're here," I replied. We sat in silence until a voice called out, "Number 13, Joanna Clark and Ethan Bryant." I stood up and started walking toward the window. Ethan didn't move. "Wait," he said, his voice raspy. He looked at me, his eyes a storm of conflicting emotions. "Joanna, do we really have to do this?" I stopped but didn't turn around. "Ethan, the moment you chose to cheat, this was already done." I walked to the window and handed over my documents. Ethan eventually followed, his steps heavy. He stood beside me, his body rigid. "IDs, original marriage license, and settlement agreement," the clerk said robotically. I calmly provided everything. Ethan hesitated. He fumbled in his pocket, his movements agonizingly slow. "Mr. Bryant?" the clerk prompted. He finally pulled out his ID, but as he handed it over, his fingers trembled uncontrollably. It slipped from his grasp and clattered onto the counter. It wasn't intentional. The ALS was getting worse. I bent down, picked it up for him, and handed it to the clerk without looking at him. "The 30-day waiting period is complete. Do both parties confirm their desire to divorce voluntarily?" the clerk asked. "I confirm," I said, my voice clear and firm. All eyes turned to Ethan. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. I saw a flicker of panic in his eyes, not just about the divorce, but about the terrifying loss of control over his own body. "Mr. Bryant?" the clerk repeated. "I confirm," he finally choked out, his voice barely a whisper. The rest was a blur of signing and stamping. 2 crimson-bound divorce decrees were pushed toward us. I reached out and took mine. The moment my fingers touched the cover, I felt an unprecedented sense of peace. 3 years of marriage, 6 years of my life, finalized by a small booklet. Ethan stared at his decree, his hand shaking as he tried several times to pick it up. "You are now officially divorced," the clerk announced. The words sounded absurdly like, "Congratulations." I turned and walked away. Ethan followed me out of the courthouse. The afternoon sun was bright and warm. I took a deep breath, savoring the feeling of freedom. "Joanna," he called out behind me. I stopped but didn't turn. "It's Dr. Clark, or Miss Clark from now on, Mr. Bryant." He was silent for a moment. "Joanna, did you really sell the house?" I finally turned to face the man I once loved. He looked even more gaunt than he had a month ago, with dark circles under his eyes. The confident, ambitious man I married was gone. "Yes, I did." "Why? Didn't your little girlfriend tell you how much of a down payment she's still short for that new condo she wants?" My tone was light, almost cheerful. Ethan's face went white. How did you know?" "That's not important," I said. "What's important is that you should understand now what she's really after." His lips trembled as he tried to speak, but he was overcome by a violent coughing fit, stumbling and nearly falling. I instinctively moved to help him, but stopped myself. Not my responsibility anymore. "Do you need me to call you a cab?" I asked, my voice distant. He managed to steady himself, a bitter smile on his face. "No. Stella's coming to get me." As if on cue, a taxi pulled up. Stella hopped out, her face immediately souring when she saw us together. "Ethan, did you get it?" she demanded, wedging herself between us and grabbing his arm possessively. He silently handed her the divorce decree. She inspected it closely, then her face broke into a radiant smile. "Finally, we can be together for real now." She turned to me, her voice dripping with condescending victory. "Thanks for making this happen, Joanna." I looked at her young, calculating face and felt a wave of pity, not for myself, but for Ethan. "You're welcome," I said flatly. "I hope you two will be very happy." With that, I walked to my car, got in, and drove away. Through the rearview mirror, I saw Stella chattering excitedly while Ethan's gaze followed my car until it disappeared. The look of regret in his eyes was profound, but it no longer concerned me. Driving away, I made a call. "Hi, it's Joanna Clark. How's the renovation on my new place coming along?" "Miss Clark, we should be done by next week. You can move in anytime." "Perfect, thank you." I rolled down the window, letting the early summer breeze fill the car. It smelled of fresh-cut grass and freedom. A month later, I moved into my new home. It was a modest apartment near the hospital, but the view was incredible. I designed it myself, bright colors, comfortable furniture, and plants everywhere. There was no trace of Ethan's preferred cold, minimalist aesthetic, none of his heavy law books or his fully stocked bar. This space was mine. Sophie and a few friends came for a housewarming party to Joanna's new life, Sophie toasted. We drank wine and laughed, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly happy. You know, one friend said, leaving him was the best thing you could have done. His reputation in the legal community has tanked. I wasn't surprised. It's not just the divorce, she continued. I heard he's been messing up major cases, even nearly collapsed in court. Rumor is he has some serious health problem. Another friend chimed in, and that Stella is a piece of work. She's been using his name to take on side gigs, overcharging clients, and completely botching them. Ethan has to clean up her messes. Sophie took my hand, and I heard he's been asking about you, that he regrets everything. I took a sip of my wine. That has nothing to do with me anymore. 2 months later, at the hospital's annual awards ceremony, I was named Physician of the Year for my work in emergency medicine. Standing on the stage, I accepted the award as the auditorium filled with applause. As my director listed my accomplishments, my eyes scanned the crowd and locked with a familiar pair. Ethan was sitting in a corner, alone. He was so thin his suit hung off his frame. He was leaning on a cane. Our gazes met. His eyes were a mixture of regret, admiration, pain, and a longing I refused to analyze. I held his gaze for a second before calmly finishing my acceptance speech. He intercepted me as I was leaving. "Congratulations," he said, his voice weaker than ever. "Thank you," I replied politely, not breaking my stride. "Joanna." "Dr. Clark," he corrected himself. "Can we talk? I have a surgery in 10 minutes. 5 minutes, please," he begged. I sighed and led him to a bench in the hospital garden. "I was diagnosed," he said, his voice strained. "ALS." I nodded. "I know." He looked at me, stunned. "When did you find out?" "The day you asked for a divorce," I said calmly. "I was the one who picked up your diagnosis report." The color drained from his face. "So you knew. Then why? Why didn't I tell you?" I finished for him. "Because you weren't worth it anymore, Ethan. The moment you betrayed our marriage, you lost the right to my care, my compassion, and my support." He squeezed his eyes shut, his knuckles white as he gripped his cane. "I was such a fool." "Yes, you were," I agreed, my voice devoid of emotion. "You threw away the one person who truly loved you for a woman who only loved your money. Stella, she left me after my diagnosis started getting bad. She's already looking for someone else." "That's the love you chose," I said. A siren wailed in the distance. My world, a world he could no longer touch. "I deserve this," he finally whispered. "This is my punishment." I stood up. "If there's nothing else, I need to go prep for my surgery." "Joanna!" he called out, his voice desperate. If I hadn't cheated, would you have stayed with me through this?" I stopped and genuinely considered his question. "Yes," I answered honestly. "If you had been worthy of it, I would have stayed with you until the very end." Tears filled his eyes. "But there are no ifs, Ethan," I continued. "You made your choice. Now you have to live with the consequences." He bowed his head, his shoulders shaking. "I regret it every single day." I looked at the broken man before me and felt nothing. "Take care of yourself," I said. It was the last thing I would ever say to him. I walked away, the sun warm on my face. I felt lighter than I had in years. A year later, I was accepted as a visiting fellow at Harvard Medical School. On the flight to Boston, I saw a familiar face. It was Dr. Ryan Davis, the colleague Ethan had accused me of cheating with. "Dr. Clark? What a coincidence," he said with a warm smile, taking the seat next to me. We chatted about our work and our plans in Boston. He was kind, intelligent, and respectful. "I heard you got divorced," he said gently after a while. "I'm happy for you. He didn't deserve you." I smiled but said nothing. "Joanna," he said, a little nervously, "I've always admired you, professionally and personally. I know the timing might not be right, but if you're ever ready to start seeing someone again, I hope you'll give me a chance." I looked out the window at the endless sea of clouds. For the past year, I had focused solely on myself and my career, but listening to Ryan, I realized I wasn't opposed to the idea of something new. "We could start as friends," I said, smiling. His face lit up. "I'd love that." As the plane flew toward my new life, I thought about Ethan. I'd heard his condition had deteriorated rapidly. Stella had taken what little money he had left and disappeared. I felt no pity, no anger, only a quiet finality. He was a chapter of my life that was now closed, a lesson that had made me stronger. The future was an open sky, and I, Joanna Clark, was ready to fly.